So first of all, I'd like to welcome you. I am Deanna Calloway. I'm with contractor Hanford Mission Integration Solutions, and we thank you for joining tonight's hybrid briefing. This meeting is being recorded. We'll post the recording of it to our events calendar in a few days as soon as we can get that rendered. Now, for those of you joining us here in the meeting, behind those curtains, there's an exit. If you go out this door and around the sideways, there's another exit, just in case we have an emergency. Tonight's big event is our Cleanup Priorities FY26 TPA review. The U.S. Department of Energy, with support of the agencies, the Environmental Protection Agency and the Washington State Department of Ecology, will talk through all of their big plans and projects they have planned as they look to the next few years ahead. We have a few technical issues to start before we begin the presentations. Tonight, we'll be using the chat box feature in Microsoft Teams. If you look around on your device, you'll see that icon that looks like a thought bubble. In the chat, Pauline Drinkard has added the link to hanford.gov to the events calendar. It contains all of tonight's meeting materials and how to submit your comments, along with an evaluation link for tonight's meeting, so you can tell us how well we did. Also, as a quick reminder, we will be answering questions in the meeting, but all comments need to be submitted in writing. We'll take them snail mail, but electronic submission is preferred. All right. Now you can submit if you have multiple questions, please save them until after everyone has had a chance to ask their first question. We encourage our virtual participants to use their cameras, and please feel free to state your name and who you represent so we can be sure and capture it in our notes. We'll pause here for just a minute, please, as we're having a few folks come in and join us. So we want to make sure everyone's ready to go. Are we a good phone? All right, we are ready to begin. It is my pleasure to point your attention to the agenda and to introduce our panelists. We have Ray Jones. He'll be talking to you about the money, the tough part. We have Paul Schroeder, who's going to be talking to us about direct feed low activity waste. No, there's no easy part up here. Matt Irwin talking about the waste treatment and immobilization plant. We have Heather Dale, who will be talking about the Central Plateau. Brian Harkins representing Mission Support. Stephanie Schleif from the Washington State Department of Ecology, and David Enan from the Environmental Protection Agency. And we thank you all. It's always a good fortune for us to be able to hear from all of you and have you answer our questions. We appreciate it. So I'll just have you take it away. Great.
Thank you very much. Well, welcome everybody in the room and online. I appreciate it. Like she said, my name is Greg Jones. I'm the Assistant Manager for Business and Financial Operations and the Hanford Site Chief Financial Officer. So we're going to cover a few things tonight. We're going to talk about the site cleanup plans, our priorities for FY26, and to do some questions and answers. So I'm going to go. Pauline, are you moving the slides? There we go. Okay. So next slide, please. So over the last few years, we have focused our cleanup on a risk reduction under three primary business lines. So we have tank waste treatment, Central Plateau and Columbia River Corridor risk reduction, and infrastructure to support that. It's really important to do all three of these. As we know, we've been working for a number of years on holistic negotiations, which are really on the tank waste treatment mission. We certainly have been getting a lot of work done in the river corridor over the years, groundwater, et cetera, and we'll talk a lot more about it, but we've been doing work on the Hanford site for 80 years. It started in 1943, so we actually have some pumps out that pull water off the river in the 100 area that were installed in 1943. So we got to make sure, since we have 40, 50 or more years of cleanup to go, infrastructure is a huge part to make sure that everybody can have the right water, power, sewer, IT, etc. So that's a huge part of our business line. We've had a 5-year plan for the last few years. What we do is we sequence it. We do 5 years, and as 1 year of work gets done, we add the next year in. So this 5-year plan has been consistent, and I think it's really helping us to focus on the work we need to do. So I think it also helps us to discuss the risks. So as I mentioned, we do update them annually. The chart on the side is a representation of the work. You can see it's color coded for tank waste, risk reduction, and infrastructure. It's a representation of some of the work we're doing in the 5-year plan, and we call it a placemat. So it's, it's just a representation of the work we're doing, not inclusive, but a representation. Next slide, please. This slide is really about the process we use to determine the priorities that we are utilizing for cleanup. So on the top row, we have an EM strategic vision, we have an integrated priority list. As I mentioned, we pull that into a 5-year plan, and then we update the EM strategic vision. So what we go to is we look at our mission, cleanup priorities, and roll it into a 5-year plan. So under cleanup objectives, clearly risk prioritization is important, consent decree is vital, and the tripartite agreement. So we are working hard to ensure that we're following and aligned with our regulators. That's what that's trying to say. We then set a suite of cleanup priorities with the following prioritization: workforce safety, community safety, environmental risk, life cycle cost, and understanding what technical challenges we have. And then what we do is we take all that information, we put it into a 5-year plan, and then incrementally formulate a budget. Every year we're working on 3 different budgets. So we are executing right now in that lower right-hand corner, the FY24 budget. So we're doing it currently under a continuing resolution that runs through Friday, but it does look like for FY24, I guess the House passed the budget today and they've sent it to the Senate. So it's pretty likely we're actually going to have a budget for FY24. We're 5 some odd months through the year, so it'll be really nice to have that. The next year is the president budget year. So sometime next week or the week after, the fiscal year 25 budget will be sent from the president to Congress. And then right now, we're talking about is planning and formulation for the FY26 budget. So it all kind of flows like that. You're executing a budget, you have a budget that's working through the executive branch and the legislative branch process, and then you're formulating the budget. It can be difficult, as you can imagine, because as I mentioned, we don't have a 24 budget yet. The budget has not been finalized yet for FY25. And so you have to make some assumptions. The good news is it does help to have a 5-year plan, cleanup priorities, and a mission with drivers like risk prioritization, consent decree, and tripartite agreement. So we have an informed basis to make the assumptions, which I think works quite well. Next slide. So our cleanup, I think you went, there we go. So our cleanup priorities are as such. This is really sort of how our budget is put together. Deliver safe and secure operations. Very important that we ensure that people can go to work and come home in the right and same manner. So we want to make sure that we're doing work, but we're also doing it safely. Huge business line is manage, treat, and dispose of tank waste. That's a big part of the work we do. We also have to stabilize aging structures, demolish retired facilities, remediate waste sites. Treating contaminated groundwater is a huge part of our business line, and you're going to hear later, I mean, we are on multiple years of treating 2.2 billion gallons or more of water a year, which is great. And I talked a little bit, and Brian Harkins will talk more about maintaining infrastructure to support the mission. The picture on the right is we're kind of excited about. So I've been working at Hanford for 29 years. I was one of the first people at the Office of River Protection, and we started trying to get a waste treatment plant back in the 2000 timeframe, and we are now operating a melter, and this is a actual glass in a canister. So it's not loaded with waste yet, but you have to get glass, you have to get a melter going, and you have to put grit and make glass out of it before you get waste. So we're really excited to be this close to treating tank waste at the Hanford site. So, and Matt and Paul will tell you more about that. The next couple slides, this is just, I'm trying to orient you to how our budget is represented. You can see this is the slide for the Office of River Protection budget. So you have the tank farm work, the waste treatment plant work, and then the commissioning work, all building up to the FY24 budget for just the Office of River Protection is nearly $2 billion. So that's a really huge part of our focus. One of the things that you will notice in the FY24 budget, and this is the president's budget, it is not the actual budget. That's hopefully coming out, as I mentioned, in the next couple days as they finalize the appropriation. But one of the things that's new is the high-level waste facility. The FY23 budget had $392 million. This budget has $600 million. So that is going to be a huge focus to try and drive towards 10 years or so treating high-level waste at the Hanford site. The Richland operations office budget has a number of control points. We have one for Central Plateau remediation, River Corps, and then we have some smaller control points for safeguard security and IT, FFTF, and then one called Richland Community and Regulatory Support, which pays for things like hills, the HAB, and the emergency preparedness grant are really the focus areas in here. So, and that is a rounded $1 billion. So you add the two up for FY24, it's a $3 billion budget at the Hanford site. It's tremendous support. And I believe that we call it a virtuous circle. And if we get work done, we get the confidence of Congress, which supports more budget. And we've been getting a lot of work done over the years, and we're super proud of that. So hopefully, as we can continue to do that, we can all focus on the 26 budget and the work we're going to get accomplished, which is why we're here today. So once again, just to summarize, we have a 5-year plan. We're getting work done. You can see how we break up our budget, and you're going to hear from the experts in the mission that what work we intend to do over the next few years. So, thank you.
Thanks, Greg. I'm Paul Schroeder. I'm the Deputy Assistant Manager for Tank Waste Operations. And Greg had mentioned 3 business lines. The first, I get to talk about the first business line, which is the Tank Waste Operations mission. And you really can't go there without talking about this slide here that you're looking at. And that's the direct feed low activity waste operations. And I really like this slide because this does a couple of things in my mind. It gives you a sense of scale of what the direct feed low activity waste operation is. And it also gives you a sense of the integration required to maintain direct feed low activity waste operations. On any given day, in order to make this process work, we're reliant upon multiple contractors, over 25 unique operations taking place simultaneously each day. And let me just kind of walk you through this slide to give you kind of a high level view. So if you look at the slide where it says start, that's pointing to what is our representative tanks of our 28 double shell tanks, which house about 53 million gallons of liquid waste. And so that liquid waste gets introduced into the direct feed low activity waste process by being sent to tank AP107, which is an underground tank. It looks like an above ground tank on this map, but it's actually an underground tank. It gets sampled by the 222S Analytical Laboratory, which is a laboratory that we've had on site really since the early 50s. It gets sampled to make sure that it's suitable for sending down the further processing and treatment. From there, it goes into what we refer to as the tank side cesium removal system, which is essentially it's a demonstration project that uses an ion exchange column system to remove cesium from the waste stream. We send that waste through at about 5 gallons per minute, which equates to about 7,200 gallons a day could be ran through the tank side cesium removal system. We completed our first campaign using that system. And we found that it was very effective in doing what it was intended to do, and that's remove cesium. In fact, it removes about 99.9% of all the cesium from the waste stream. Once it goes through the tank side cesium removal system, it gets put into tank AP106. From there, it gets sampled again to make sure it's suitable for sending further down the processing line to the waste treatment plant. Specifically the low activity waste vitrification plant, which is represented by the large rectangular box with all the purple shading above it. We could send batches of upwards of about 8,000 gallons of waste per day to that waste treatment plant once it's fully operational. And that will be able to, using 2 melters, that will be able to produce roughly 3.5 to 5 canisters per day, which equates to about 2,100 metric tons of glass per day. And those canisters, you see get removed from the facility. We remove about 3.5 canisters a day. That gets moved into a large landfill. It's an engineered landfill called the Integrated Disposal Facility, roughly 1,600 feet long by about 700 feet across. And that's where those canisters get housed. And then along with that process, just kind of marching you around kind of the supporting facilities, a couple highlights in my mind. One is if you think of introducing waste, liquid waste into a melter involving high amounts of heat, you're naturally going to produce a significant amount of condensate. That condensate needs to go somewhere. It goes to the effluent management facility and then ultimately into the effluent treatment facility and through via the liquid effluent retention facility. All of those facilities are have been newly upgraded to support not just the needs of the waste treatment plant, but also the needs of the site. In the case of the effluent treatment facility and the liquid effluent retention facility. Couple significant items as well on this map is if you think about just the amount of electrical power that's needed to support this operation, it draws about 50 megawatts of power, which is enough to power about 40,000 homes. And it also draws about 3.5 million gallons of water per day to maintain operations. So a lot of integration required to make that happen. Everyone is independent upon the other, and then also just to support the general process. You can imagine just the amount of product and supplies that need to be sent to the waste treatment plant in order to just feed the system. And on upwards of about 8 to 10 large shipping trucks per day. Next slide. This next slide really just kind of gives you some actual photos of some of the areas that I pointed out on the previous slide. Starting from the top left, you see a picture looking downward on an AP tank farm, along with the tank side cesium removal system. Tank side cesium removal system is a little bit larger in the photograph directly below that. But essentially it is a relatively small facility that's modular facility that is really housed in a few different Conex box type enclosures. Moving across the top of the top of the photographs, you'll see the low activity waste facility looking down with the green roof and the green siding on it. Then off again to the right, you see the integrated disposal facility, which is that engineered landfill. Then you see another picture of the effluent management facility. Again, in order to treat the condensate, the effluent management facility accommodates roughly anywhere from 45,000 to 90,000 gallons once or twice a week. And then another picture of the 222S laboratory. This one's a little bit harder to locate the laboratory. It's actually a rectangle, the second largest rectangle in that photograph, right below the larger rectangle, which is the redox facility, which is no longer being used. And then on the bottom row of photos, you see a picture of the liquid effluent retention facility. One of those are very large settling ponds, essentially. Those engineered ponds, we added one of those 4 just recently within the last couple of years. That'll significantly increase our capacity to process secondary waste. And then finally, you see the analytical laboratory. So that's the analytical laboratory that's on the waste treatment plant, not to be confused with the 222S laboratory, which I talked about first. This particular laboratory is actually intended to process to perform in-process sampling analysis of the waste and glass product as it's moving through the plant. Next slide. And then the final slide I'm going to just kind of share with you is just kind of an aerial view of the Hanford campus. This is there's a couple of things that I think is of interest. First of all, on the leading edge of this photograph, you see the buildings with the green rooftops. That's the waste treatment plant area. Those facilities are as marked on that. And then immediately above that, you see the AP farm. That's where the Tisker farm and the Tisker demonstration project is located, as well as the AP farm. And then I think the other thing to note, to just kind of give you a sense of scale, is when you look at the large or the blue boxes, SX, S, U, T, TX, and T. Those are the tank farms that are located in the on the west side of the Hanford site, and there's roughly about 2.5 miles that separate the waste treatment plant from those farms. And the other thing I think that's notable on this particular slide is the shading of blue depicts the difference between what are double shell tank farms and single shell tank farms. And if you look at just the numbers, and in particular the numbers of the single shell tank farms in the west area, that really is our next frontier. That's where our significant body of work is going forward in the near term, once we complete the AP farm, the AA farm, and the AX farm. So a few farms to go early on, but then we're heading west with lots of work to do. I'll turn this over to Ben.
All right, thanks, Paul. I think you're gonna catch me up to this. Okay, so thanks, Paul. My name is Matt Irwin. I'm the acting assistant manager for the waste treatment and mobilization plant. Since we're talking about 2026, you will notice that Paul talked a lot about the EF law facilities, because those will be in operations. So I think you all heard the eagerness in Paul's voice. I'm excited for him because we'll be in operations at that point. So what I get to talk about now is in 2026, we'll be focused on HLW, which we just got the proposal from Bechtel in November to support the design period. So when we get to 2026, we'll be about halfway through that design period. The focus will be 3 primary things. The first one is completing the 90% design on all of the various facilities for HLW. The second one is to be bringing all the over-the-top equipment. What we call it from a WTV standpoint is the low risk work that has a low risk of having to perform rework. Those are things like shield doors, some of the bigger vessels, some of the cranes, and those will be lifted up over the top. They were procured previously. They'll go through all their inspections and all their initial tests to make sure that they're meeting the quality requirements. But they'll go over the top, and the reason we're doing that is because we need to weather in the facility. So if you look at the picture here on the screen, you'll notice a number of open areas. Those have been open since we were in pause here previously. We'll get those over the top equipment in so that we can weather it in. That'll provide protection for the facility. We're making sure that the design is adequately mature before we put those components in, and then we'll weather in the facility to close up the top. So those 3 things are mature the design, complete the 90% design during the design period, which we'll complete in the 2027 fiscal year. Get the over the top adds up. Today, we have 8 of the 55. By the time we get to 2026, we'll be well past the halfway point of those 55 over the top, and then we'll be working through the weathering in. That's going to continue to ramp up from this year to next and into the 26 and 27 timeframe. And once we get past the design period, then we'll go into the construction and commissioning phase to support operations, as Greg mentioned earlier. So I have a lot smaller piece to talk about, but it's still going to be exciting because we got a lot of things to do from an HLW perspective. So I'll hand up to you, Heather.
Thank you. I'm Heather Dale. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'll be talking about 3 major activities within the risk reduction work scope. The 396 waste sites, the waste encapsulation and storage facility, and groundwater. And while this briefing is focused on our FY26 activities, I will go into some background regarding the 396 waste site as well as our waste encapsulation storage facility for your situational awareness, because the things we're doing in 26 are building upon activities in 25 and 26. So I'll start with our building 324. Essentially, we're resequencing. Resequencing was necessary due to the discovery of increased waste footprint. So this year, FY '24 and FY '25 will be working to deactivate and decommission the 324 facility. In FY '26, we're planning to demolish the facility and prepare for the waste site remediation. And what's important is we're going to be doing some activities in tandem. So the point or what we're looking to do is we're not just going to tear down the structure and leave the site open. So we have to work the design in tandem. So we're looking to do that in FY '25. So essentially what will happen is we'll go through those activities, we'll tear down the building and we'll have a structure over it, and then we'll remediate the site. Moving on to our waste encapsulation and storage facility, that's our high priority on the Central Plateau. Where nearly 2,000 capsules of radioactive cesium and strontium are stored in an underwater basin. Just again, to give you some background, we plan to this year to complete the installation of the transfer equipment. Next year, we'll be conducting operations testing, readiness activities, and we'll start operations by the end of the fiscal year 5. Then in FY '26, '27, and '28, that's when we're going to start our transfer operations. So in FY '26, we'll start transferring capsules to dry storage. We'll load the capsules into the vertical concrete casks, or VCC, at the Westside facility. And we'll be moving loaded VCC into the capsule storage area for interim dry storage. The current assumption is that it'll take about a month and a half to load each VC. So with 18 VCCs, it's forecasted to take between 27 and 36 months between the transfer operations, as well as equipment and maintenance activities. And last but not least, we're going to continue our ongoing groundwater operations. We'll continue soil flushing in the 100K East and 100K West areas. We'll complete installation of an additional transfer line from 200 West to 200 East Pump and Treat to allow for treatment of groundwater. And we'll continue active remediation to maintain pool control and reduce the footprint of groundwater contamination. With that, I will turn it over to Mr. Hart.
Thank you. So I'll talk briefly about infrastructure. Next slide, please. So as we progress to mission, the part that is normally recognized unless something goes wrong is the infrastructure behind that supports all of the cleanup activities. And so there are a number of areas where we're focused on either maintaining current infrastructure or upgrading infrastructure to meet future needs. In 26, we'll be focused on replacement of the pumps down at the river that supply water to the site. We are currently in construction of a new water treatment plant and a storage tank. And the pumps, as mentioned earlier, that we use currently were manufactured or installed in 1943. Amazing that they lasted this long. But with a 50-year plus mission here, we need to have reliable water service for the site. We also will be doing a number of electrical system upgrades to ensure reliable power to those areas that are working. So, for example, the vitrification plant, a loss of power event can be a catastrophic event. In that after a relatively short amount of time, the facility turns into a giant glass log and we can't restart it. So we'd have to replace the melter, multi-million-dollar impact. And so reliable power is very important as we progress to work, whether it be the final work in the river corridor area or whether it be moving forward with starting the work in the West Tank. You see the pictures up there for other activities. Road maintenance is a constant battle to ensure that we have safe roads. You see our emergency response processes that are used if we have emergencies. We have the facilities for that. Our Hanford fire and patrol operations are important elements for our programs. And those programs will continue as well as we go forward, focus on we're the need for admission. So for example, in 26, we'll start a new firehouse, up on the 200 plateau area near the waste treatment facility. So that we have crews stationed close to that facility if there's an emergency event. To reduce our response time and give us better protection for workers. So with that, Dana, do you want to go into your comments? You want to move to the phone?
Let's go to our next two slides and then we'll conclude this staff community. So as you heard, we have many projects here at the Hanford site. We're very proud, all of the regulators and the staff are very proud of all this work. The best way to keep track of it, because it's coming as fast as we can get it out there, is by following the social media. Also, we're trying to be a little more environmentally responsible and we're trying to cut down on our snail mail. If you go to this QR code, you can also find this on our events calendar. It will take you to an email address. Just type in your home address where you're getting your printed mail and add your email address. We'll take you off the printed distribution. We'll add you on electronically to the electronic distribution, and then you can have just a little less mail coming into your mailbox. And our last slide will show you what the comment period dates are. Again, we kick off tonight, March 6th. This comment period will be open for 30 days through April 5th, and we will be happy to take your comments in writing, either mail them in or our preferred method is electronically through this email address. And now we will hear comments from Stephanie Schlein from the Washington State Department of Ecology and with David Eamon from the Environmental Protection Agency. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. Just to make sure everyone can hear me okay as I get started. Okay, thank you, Ryan. Appreciate the thumbs up. As Dana mentioned, I'm Stephanie Schleif, Acting Program Manager with Washington State Department of Ecology. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us tonight. I'll keep my remarks brief. We won't allow time for robust Q&A. I'll also just mention that our presentation is a little different than Department of Energy's, where they focus on FY26 priorities. Ours talks about our priorities over the coming year. If you go to the next slide, please. We'll start out talking about the tank waste retrieval and treatment mission. We hope for settlement soon from the holistic negotiations discussions that we've been in with Department of Energy, Environmental Protection Agency, and Department of Justice. We announced a conceptual agreement in May of 2023, and we've been working hard to finalize changes to the truck ready agreement and consent decree. Any priorities will be in accordance with settlement schedules coming out of that negotiation. And we also continue to support the appropriation for high-level waste facilities, as Matt talked about. We also support the 2,000-gallon test bed initiative under the prior appropriation Department of Energy carried over. Also just want to mention that the test bed initiative research development demonstration permit that we've been working on with Department of Energy will be going out for public comment period soon. That actually starts on Monday and will continue for 45 days. And I'll also just plug, there's going to be a public comment meeting March 20th for that permit as well here at the library. We're also preparing the Yukon research demonstration development permit for public comment. Those unfamiliar with Yukon and what it is to evaluate the effectiveness of a particular control technology in reducing concentrations of target tank vapor constituents and air emissions from Hanford tanks. Next slide, please. Continuing on tank waste retrieval and treatment, we'll continue to support waste treatment plant operations, including the DF1 mission that Paul spoke to. That includes supporting melter to heat up, providing technical assistance for low activity waste facility startup, supporting the environmental performance demonstration test and PDT as well. There's also ongoing modifications we're supporting for the high level waste facility and the tank site medium removal system, as well as the low activity waste pretreatment system. Moving on to AMPS, which is the Advanced Modular Pretreatment System. We'll continue to support preliminary work for that system to be able to permit it as a replacement for Fisker. We'll continue to support review and closeout of deliverables under our leaking tanks and reorder that we signed with the Department of Energy. And we continue to expect retrieval of the A farm in the waste management area. A farm is what WMA is. Moving on to the next slide. Moving on to Central Plateau priorities. One of the biggest priorities for Department of Ecology has been working on the draft version 9A Hanford Dangerous Waste Permit. We're going to issue that for public comment in 2024. We continue our circle operable unit work, supporting 200 EA1 work plans for the soil operable unit and 255 EA1 groundwater operable unit work. We continue to support integrated disposal facility, IDF operational readiness, which is also spoken to earlier. And I also just want to note that every 3 years, Department of Energy updates the Hanford Life Cycle Cost Scope and Schedule Report. That report accounts for all tri-party agreement milestone commitments. Priorities for ecology are specified in the tri-party agreement milestones. While we engage in discussions with EPA and Department of Energy on items like the Hanford Integrated Priority List that Greg spoke about, our official formal commitments are in the form of tri-party agreement milestones. Moving to the next slide, please. Talking about upcoming milestones that we have leading into FY 26. There are important critical milestones associated with transuranic mixed waste treatment. Those are upcoming milestones within the bullets. I'm not going to read through everyone for the sake of time, but I'll highlight in particular the one in 2026 to start certifying transuranic mixed waste shipment to WIP. That's critical to meet to continue meeting the 2028 date to begin to restart shipments to the waste isolation pilot. Another milestone is in 2026 for DOE to submit to us a 30% engineering design for facilities to convert reactive bulk sodium in the 400 area to non-reactive sodium hydroxide. And as Tyler spoke to, it's also very important to ecology to begin transfer of the seasoned strong sodium capsules from wet storage into dry storage. Next slide, please. Other priorities, continuing to support the D4 work across the site. And the deep beta zone, deep beta zone optimal unit circle work that's ongoing. Continuing to the last slide. I'll just end my remarks by noting the importance of the Hanford cleanup and the importance of getting a compliant budget for the Department of Energy to meet their cleanup obligations for people of Washington State. We continue to see important increases in amounts appropriated by Department of Energy cleanup sites. And we hope to see a federal fiscal year 24 budget increase for Hanford of over $3 billion. We've seen that in the Tri-City Herald this week. We're very hopeful. More will be needed though for federal fiscal year 25 as the tank waste mission continues to ramp up and the is operating. We're committed to continuing discussions with congressional delegation on the importance of the mission and getting the cleanup fully funded. With that, I will turn it over to Dave Ena, the EPA.
Thank you, Stephanie, and my colleagues from the Department of Energy, and thank you all for being here. First and foremost, we want to hear from you during this process and what your priorities are. Also want to congratulate the Department of Energy, Department of Ecology, and the contractor team for the melter heat up, the first canister, and the imminent heating up of the second melter. Those are huge milestones, and they deserve a lot of congratulations for that. Our EPA's priorities at Hanford, our focus is on the circle work, the cleanup work. It's primarily on Richland's program, Heather's program, and it's really on a few of those TDSs that we're going to show. And for FY 26, and so this is in that risk reduction category and so forth. And like Stephanie said, we reflect our priorities 3 milestones. Could you pull up the energy's presentation in the Richland budget slide? So for example, some things that are important to us in the RL 13 PDS, it's the ERDF, that's where the ERDF operations go, environmental restoration disposal facility. That's where all of the cleanup waste, when we dig up a site, dig up and clean up a waste site, bring down a building, that's where the waste goes. So that's very important to us to maintain that. Cleanup of Hanford has been successful because we have our. That's also true of other Department of Energy sites in the complex. They need a place to send the waste. You don't have a place to send the waste, we don't need a cleanup. So keeping ERDF operating and keeping capacity for ERDF, that's very important. Similarly, this is a little bit esoteric or weird, I'm sorry, but as you fill ERDF, fill a landfill,
if you think about it, you're building the foundation for its eventual cap. You don't want subsidence, you don't differentiate settlement. So that means you have to have a mix of soil and debris. And we want to use dirty soil, contaminated soil, so from cleanup rather than clean soil. So you'll see some of our priorities reflected in that, in keeping that balance of soil and debris cleanups. So further operations of the new cell in RL 13 and the cesium and the strontium capsule, getting those to dry storage, that's part of RL 13. Those are very important to us. Going down to RL 30, the groundwater pump and treat along the river in the Central Plateau and implementing other groundwater remedy decisions. Those are all priorities. Down into RL 40, there's the remedies for 100K, there's continued soil cleanup. And fuel storage basins, those dealt with. There's on the Central Plateau, there's 200 IA1, BC1, and PW136. PW136 are the plummeting rich grids that we need to get those deal with for kind of a long time period. And when I say IA1, we're not always talking about all of one, right? Because that again provides a bunch of dirty soil for to maintain that soil and debris channel. And then in RL 41, there's still some wayside remedies to be implemented along the river corridor, including the soil, the better June 96 soil, the 324 building that we mentioned, and getting ready for the remediation of 1811 burial ground, which is next to the parking lot for Energy Northwest. Just one quick clarification. We're in the process of reaching the decision about what to do about 296. Well, it may have been a little bit confusing the way Heather said it. We haven't made the decision about resequencing yet, but that's the process we're working through. And we expect to be making that later this fall, and including public involvement. So that's imminent, but right there yet, we're still evaluating all the things we need to do. And again, so that's where I'm going to stop. And again, thank you for being here and both in the room and online. And we really truly want to hear from you. That's the purpose of being here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our presenters and for everyone here. Let's get right to the priorities. Are there people in the chat, Colleen, who have a question? Are there any callers on the phone who are on the phone only? Press *6 to unmute and you can ask your question. I can see a lot of people on the telephone only, so again, *6 to unmute. All right, we will get right to the questions right in the room. Who has a question here?
How are you managing risk if you don't know the budget and how much money you make coming your way and making all these plans?
Yeah, I could, right. Thank you for the question. So as I understand it, how do we manage our risk when we don't know what our budget's going to be in 26? So we make some assumptions, Greg mentioned. They're informed assumptions. They include our milestones and the work that has to go in to support those. And in addition to that, we developed an integrated priority list. The integrated priority list has put those highest risk activities, those most important at the top, and allows us to, as we do find our numbers, adjust what is in the scope for 26. And we've worked with ecology and EPA on getting their input on that list so that it's a informed risk. It's not perfect, but the integrated priority list is how we would go from a budget development where we make assumptions on how much funding that we need to complete our milestones to enacting what is actually appropriate.
That answer your question.
No. All right, try again, please.
All right, so actually, there's one question I had that I should have asked before. For the record, can I get each of your individual credentials, so I understand what perspective and understanding you have, if I can ask the proper questions? And,
So by credentials, my job title, you mean?
job title, education, what brings you to the table today?
Oh, thank you. My name is Brian Harkins. I'm the assistant manager for mission integration. I'm a mechanical engineer, been here for 30 years now. So,
My name is Heather Jane. I've been with the project since August. My background is in managing large scale projects.
Matt Irwin, acting assistant manager for the waste treatment plant. I've been here 30 years as well. My background is a nuclear engineer.
Paul Schroeder, I am also an engineer. I've been working in nuclear industry for about 32 years, the last 14 of it at Hanford in a number of different work management and engineering capacities.
I'm Greg Jones. I've got 35 years of experience in business and financial management. I've been on the site since 1993, and I've been at Hanford since 1995. And for the last 17 years, I've been the chief financial officer of the site and have responsibility for people, money, and contracts. And so recently, the contract was pulled out. So that's our experience.
Thank you.
And then our regulators as well, please. And I think they've got one.
I can figure out how to turn it on.
I trust them both there. And no, go ahead.
Okay, so you want us to answer the question too?
We are all federal employees.
I understand.
Okay.
So I'm a state employee. I'm the last state employee at the table. So I'm acting program manager right now for the nuclear waste program, Washington State Department of Ecology. My permanent job is deputy program manager for nuclear waste program. I've been with the program a little over 10 years now, various capacities. Prior to that, I worked for Keystone Naval Shipyard for 5 years. Say about I have over 15 years experience in environmental, federal facility cleanup oversight. My degree is in environmental engineering. So I guess I could turn into engineering trends.
And if it wasn't obvious, I'm also an engineer. It's a birth defect. So I'm a Richland native. I've been with the Environmental Protection Agency for 34 and a half years, all here at Hanford, all doing this work, all the time doing this work. I worked for a couple of years with the contractor before starting with EPA. And I'm senior DVR beyond for Region 10, but for in terms of Hanford, I'm the Hanford program.
But after hearing all that, I'm not sure why they let me work here. I mean, well, I'm qualified now. And we have a question online. Colleen, would you like to read the question on the chat? Yes.
Thank you. Yes, we actually have three people with questions. We have Jerry Paulette, Shelley Simone, and Bud Anderson with questions. So we'll start with Jerry. You might want to ask the question yourself. Jerry, can you try unmuting yourself and let's see if we can hear you?
I should be unmuted. Can you hear me?
We can hear you
Okay.
now. Go
Thank
ahead.
you. See thumbs up. Thank you for the briefing and for the thumbs up. You have to be, the department has to be preparing its FY 2026 budget. And we are awaiting a leak response plan in regard to the tanks that are currently leaking. And there may be more than 2 that are leaking today. And there are likely to be more that leak between now and FY 26. And Stephanie, your slide said that ecology was going to review and close out of deliverables under the leaking tanks agreed order. But I'm concerned about first question, will there be funds identified and requested from Congress to carry out obligations that come out of a proposed permit and leak response plan? And secondly, would you discuss what the process will be for public review of the leak response plan for the tanks that are currently leaking, as well as for the permit, which is different than responding to the tanks that are leaking today?
I apologize for the microphone background. So I heard two questions there. The first was, will there be funds identified for responses to leaking tanks? I'm going to let the Department of Energy address that question. I will address the question about what the public process will look like for the leak response plan piece. So the leak response plan was provided to us in draft, I believe it was August of last year. We've been working with the Department of Energy to respond to our comments on that document. It will be included in, I mentioned the Hanford site-wide dangerous waste Rev 9A permit that's going to go out for public comment in 2024. The intent is to include that leak response plan in that Rev 9 permit that will go out for public comment. And right now we anticipate that public comment will be about 120 days. Hope I addressed that question, and I'll turn it over to Paul's got the microphone handy to address that.
All right. Yeah, and on the funding, similarly to what Brian had laid out, we evaluate everything based on a risk-based approach. And so the leak response plan or the activities needed to support the leak response plan would be evaluated and sorted accordingly. And based on funds, we have to make that decision at that time. That being said, the supporting the agreed order is a regulatory or a legal requirement for us, and we're committed to supporting that and working with the ecology to complete and finalize the leak response plan draft that's been submitted right now.
All right, so our next question is from Shelley Simone. Let's see, Shelley asks, skipped on me. When can we expect resolution of the holistic negotiations?
I guess I'll take that one, but essentially, the holistic negotiations continues to make good progress. I think they've never been closer, and but in exact time, I think we'll just have to allow the process to work. But it is moving along well. Stephanie, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I think you said it well, Paul. The only time I can remember it soon.
Do you have methodology that we can review about your risk? I don't understand how you assess risk other than, is there a way for us as a public to review how you're making those risk-based decisions? Do you have a model or a framework?
Yeah, I guess I'll take that question maybe offline to figure out, if there's something else that we could present to the public. But, for the purpose of this discussion, I can tell you what we do is we look at the risk to the environment, the health of the public. And so the way the department would look at it is, what are those areas where we have the highest levels of contamination and the highest liability to the environment. And those are the areas that we tend to prioritize first.
The next online question I have is from Bud Anderson. Why do you think you can be successful now when you have missed the deadlines for the past 20 years and blown away original budgets by many orders of magnitude?
Sure. All right, so I'll turn, and this is only one slice. So from a WTP perspective, right, it's been a long time coming, understand, it hasn't been a straight line to get to where we are now. But we've been, eating the elephant one bite at a time, making sure that we're systematic, making sure that we're safe, and that we're moving forward on the design that's been put in place quite a while back. And I guess I would just say from a WTP perspective, our intention is to continue the progress that you've seen over the last, it's gonna be going on, we're at about 10 months now, and starting at Melter 2 heat up here within the next few days. Getting ourselves into the co-commissioning phase, and through the rest of this year, getting down to the point where we can actually do that environmental performance demonstration test, which I know we didn't talk about here tonight. But we have a number of key activities that demonstrate that the facility operates the way it should. And we run it through its paces without radioactive waste, so that we can get to that point here nominally in the next year to year and a half, so that Paul can actually provide that radioactive waste for hot commissioning and start operating the plant. So have there been challenges in the past? Absolutely. Can I guarantee we won't have challenges? I can guarantee we will have challenges, but we're going to work through them systematically like we have been. And we believe that our degree of success continues to go up, and we expect to continue to build on that. So I know that's just one slice, and I don't know if anybody else wants to talk from a different perspective, but that's why we have optimism on our plan and the outcomes that we are driving towards.
From the group.
From the infrastructure or financial perspective on
So from a financial perspective, and it's really more a cleanup perspective, we've in the cleanup, we've had a bias for action. You could have characterized all the waste sites, you could have characterized all the facilities, you could characterize every tank, and it would take decades to get that done. We've been trying to progress cleanup along the way, and what we found over the years is that we assume a waste site might be the size of this room, and lots of them are the size of this building. And that's happened over and over and over again. We're talking about the 300-296 waste site. We had an assumption that it was all contained under the structure or part of the structure of the hot cell, and we found that it isn't. So we have to do something a little different than we planned. And that happens all the time when you have a bias for action. As a, from a regulatory standpoint, we've done a lot of work in the river corridor under interim records of decision, trying to progress the cleanup before we have final records of decision. I think it's still the right thing to do, but it can make it look like we are underestimating the costs. You have to make an estimate and base your decisions on a bias for action and trying to progress cleanup. So we have been doing that, but many times it's more expensive and a little more difficult than we think. What's that?
years of assumptions going wrong. I mean, in any other business, you would not be alive at it anymore. But I'm just curious how your assumptions over 20 years have not been informative enough to at least make it to a budget.
Is there a question?
So how do you justify the funds that you receive and the increase that you receive when you have not performed to the milestones previously contracted?
I think we have performed to many of them, maybe not all of them, but many of our milestones we have achieved. We've achieved.
Percentage would be helpful.
I don't have that in front of me, but we can probably put that out as we're moving along. So.
So I'll answer the question from infrastructure you asked about. So infrastructure is about making sure that we can meet what we know today. So those needs that we have for the bit plant electrical water usage, the other site work activities, moving forward in front of coming work, those commitments and milestones, and putting the infrastructure in place to do that work. And then the third area is the emerging work. Things change. And so, for example, if you would ask me 2 years ago about my electrical distribution system and its capacity, we would have told you that things were looking really good. And yet now I'm in the midst of going to 100% electric vehicles. And my electrical load is going up dramatically. To do that, I will put in the infrastructure now that I didn't expect 2 years ago to be able to support those changes. Milestones that haven't been committed to yet, we'll come up with the last evaluation of those for our infrastructure. So Hanford is a journey. We're making progress and we're doing the best we can with the money we have and the information we have today. But as new information emerges, then we have to evaluate that information, what the risks are, and work together with the regulators on a path forward to address those in a timely manner. That help at all? Thank you.
One of the remarks that Brian Vance has made in the past that's helpful to me is he says, this is the greatest public works project of our time. It's a 600 square mile site and full of many surprises. I want to make sure everyone has had an opportunity to ask a first question. Oh, no. This is Maya Burke from Hanford Challenge.
Yeah, Burke.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Paul, this is for you. You mentioned that it's gonna take for DFLAW 3.5 million gallons of water per day. And I'm guessing that's year round. That's a lot of water. Is that all coming from the Columbia River? And then where is it going? Where does it end up? Does it need to be treated? Kind of what's the pathway of that water?
That's a good question. I'm gonna pass this off to the infrastructure guys in the waste treatment plant.
You wanna?
Yeah.
Picture, and then I can have WTP.
Yeah, so it does all come from the Columbia. And the water usage is, goes through the facilities for usage and then is treated for final disposal. And, so we have treatment facilities that treat, the wastewater, depending on its source. So sewage is an example. We still have a mix of some areas that are, have septic systems. We are moving towards a evaporative sewage lagoon for the site. So the west area, we have the facility in place. In other areas, we will treat the liquids to drinking water standards and then inject them into the ground again. So, and with that, I'll let Matt talk about specific water usage.
So a couple of things, just to be clear, when Paul talks about DFLAW, it's all of those facilities that are DFLAW. So those are facilities that are supporting facilities, as well as those facilities that are on the WTP footprint. So I'll give you the example, this is not millions of gallons, but it is a significant amount, is for the law facility, as everybody knows, that's glass. So that glass is at 2100 degrees. It has an off-gas system that treats that, the off-gas off the top of the melter. And that's what I was talking about, the environmental performance demonstration test. But all of the components along that off-gas train have cooling water systems. So those cooling water systems keep those systems at the temperatures that support the operation of that piece of equipment. That's what we call secondary cooling water. That secondary cooling water goes down to the effluent management facility. It goes through an evaporator. That condensate off the evaporator goes to tank farms. So that's part of that waste is the secondary water. It's boiled off and the condensate goes out of the effluent treatment facility and then it gets treated there. And then the other waters are the cooling water. So we have like processed cooling water. That system provides cooling for some of the components in the facility, not part of the off-gas system. So that's keeping those systems cool so that they operate at the proper temperatures and in the proper configuration. So law is it's a decent amount. Then you got the lab. The lab uses water for doing the chemistry work and processing those process samples that support the operation of WTP. And then we have components like the chillers and compressors, and there is a certain amount of cooling water that goes along with those systems. So those are the primary ones within WTP. But as I pointed out, that if you think of the day in the life that Paul showed, those are all the facilities that support DFLAW, and each of them has some level of water usage and water. Oh, I'm sorry, one other really big component, and that's fire protection systems. So all of the feed that Brian System gives support those fire protection systems. Obviously, they're not on all the time, but they do have surplus capacity in the event of an emergency, and they also go through testing. So those are some of the loads from a water standpoint. Thanks.
Thank you. And then Colleen has some more questions in the chat.
Yeah, we have a few more questions from first time, the first questions. This first one is from Ace Hoffman. His question is a two-part question. Part one, how much new contamination of groundwater, soil, and or buildings has been found in the previous year? And part two, in a typical year, is the contamination getting worse? If so, is it due to new leaks or new discoveries of already occurring leaks?
So that's a good question, and I don't have an answer for it, so I would ask you to submit it to the email that was put up there. But I will say, being new to the project, that we do have considerable, I would say, achievements in our groundwater program. We're very reactive in analyzing the plumes and watching the plumes, seeing where they're going. I believe we've pulled out 700 pounds or 700 pounds of contaminants from the water. Thank you. And we've treated 2.2 billion gallons of groundwater. So we work in partnership with our mission partners within the EPA and Washington State Ecology to ensure that the groundwater operations that we have are adaptive and that they're agile and they're moving with the river, so that we can, as we have a well to treat a plume and the water moves, we are able to follow that movement and make sure that we're focused on water. And I apologize, like I said, I'm used, but if that didn't answer your question, then please refer, send it for public comment.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is from Paul. Paul asks, given the timelines of the DF law and high-level waste processes under current budget levels, will we have sufficient tank storage through the 2000s?
Yes, the short answer is yes. And to, you know, the longer term answer is the situation actually improves as the waste treatment plant begins to operate. That begins to free up more tank space, and that provides us more flexibility and actually helps speed up the process for retrieving waste.
All right, and then the next question is from Mo Lutz. Can you expand upon the secondary effluent management facility and the treatment of secondary waste? Are there byproducts that will need to be transported off-site?
So for EMF, the condensate goes to the effluent treatment facility. From a WTP standpoint, we call them the bottoms. It's the particulates and those contaminants that are not water. Those go to the bottom of the evaporator and EMF, and those get fed back into the law facility. So there are no byproducts that have to be treated other than sending it back and putting it into the glass. And then from the standpoint of the condensate, that's clean condensate. It still goes through a treatment process to ETF, but it's not, there aren't significant byproducts that go with that. From our standpoint, we feed back in all those things that are the contaminants that would have to be handled in another way, and we put it in glass.
Let's double check to make sure we have no one on the phone. *6 to unmute if you're on the phone only. All right, and I think I saw a question here.
For infrastructure, I just recently read that our cold snap in January, with a max load on our grid, I don't know what I'm talking about, but we haven't used that much electricity since the aluminum smelting shutdown. So is your 50 megawatts a day demand able to be met with our current situation? And looking forward, the Columbia Generating Station license goes till 2043. But what's the plan after that for base load? Or the the fate of the Snake River Dam, how will that affect your need for electricity?
So Hanford site utility, electrical needs are growing. As I mentioned, electrical vehicles, et cetera. The VIP plans as they come on, will increase our capacity and load. There is a need for new technologies, new generation to come on. And I think you've recently seen in the papers that the department has put out requests for companies to come in and do some generation here north of Richland. But I think as a Northwest, I would say there is a push to identify new generation that will help not only Hanford, but all the growing need for the Northwest for power. That answer your question?
As best as we can, yeah.
And any other questions in the room?
It is a good question. If you want me to wait for the mic.
So everyone can hear.
All right, hey, this is David Reedblad with Tridec and Hanford Communities. It's a question for you, probably, Matt. I know a year or two ago, the analysis of alternatives was released for the high-level waste facility. And earlier you talked about the percent of design completion and kind of moving forward. Can you talk about how the AOA kind of factors into that, or if there's still work ongoing with AOA, or is it considered sort of completed at this point, or how does that all kind of work together?
So the analysis of alternatives supports the holistic negotiations. The holistic negotiation supports the ultimate decision. The ultimate decision then would be factored into the design of the final design of the HLW facility. We know there's a number of things that regardless of that final decision will remain constant. I'll use an easy example. There's cranes in the facility that are going to be the same no matter what the holistic negotiations results are. But we'll factor in any adjustments that we need to make once that decision's made subsequent to holistic negotiations. And then we'll finish the design and go construct the facility. So I know that doesn't give you the details, but we know there's a large body of the details that aren't going to change regardless of what the holistic negotiation result comes out as. There's a few that may change, but those are details that we can handle on the back side of the design. If that makes sense. Still within the design period, but on the back side of that. Thank you.
Any other questions in the room?
The cranes bought or renting?
Cranes that I'm referring to are all within the facility itself, but they're bought. There are some mobile cranes on site that are leased, but they're only temporary and they're just used to support construction. But the ones I'm talking about are the physical ones in the facility itself, and they're permanent and purchased.
One last call for people on the phone. *6 to unmute if anyone on the phone only has a question. And one last call for any questions to be submitted in the chat. I'm not seeing any. And last call for any questions in the room before we conclude.
Curious, so one question I saw line item in the budget, not this one, but that the treaty between Canada and the United States for the water company through this is being negotiated or something. Is that going to impact us here in the Hanford project?
Great. I have no information. I don't think even it's not, you guys don't.
So I think that item in the paper was on about the proposed listing of the Upper Columbia River site on the, putting that on.
Treaty with Canada for the flow of the water. And so it's up. And so there's money in the budget, figure something out. I don't know if that'll impact us if we're first in line to get that water for the most part. And Hanford depends on it.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question. I'm afraid I did not think about that topic.
It's a new one for me too. Any other questions before we conclude the meeting from people in the room? Well, on behalf of the Department of Energy, all the contractors, the agencies, a special thank you for everyone for coming after a long day to put in a long evening with us. A special thanks to everyone who participated. And I can tell you personally, your comments matter. This particular comment period is for us to hear what your priorities are that will help us formulate the budget for fiscal year 2026. We appreciate all the comments, but if we can help focus there, they're read very carefully here at the Hanford site. They're compiled, they're sent to headquarters, and they're read very carefully there, and they do impact final decisions. So it's very important that we hear from you, and we appreciate your efforts very much. Colleen has dropped a survey link into the chat. You can let us know what we can do to improve, what we did right. We'd love to hear from you, and we thank you all very much. Again, just go to the events calendar, click on the events meeting or the public comment period, and it shows you how to submit your comments. We appreciate you very much and have a nice